Okay. Oh, no, he didn't.
Girl, yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Welcome, 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 welcome. Him did. And we don't know if him is good or bad for doing it.
Who
We never
knows?
know. Sometimes we do know. This one we actually don't know. Welcome to another edition of Oh No Girl Yes, the podcast. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. Thank you for listening wherever you listen to your podcast. And make sure you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And don't forget, we have Patreon where you get behind the scenes. If you were a member of Patreon, you got to get a lot more dish on our guest last week, Brittany from the Dr. Phil show.
Right.
So quick question. No, not a question. Don't forget first date. If you are listening to this and you'd like to be considered for our show first date, send us your information because we have another episode coming up very, 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 very soon.
Super soon. Super soon.
Super soon. So if you ever want to be considered to be on that show, send us your info. All right. So this is another clip that's been making the rounds on the interweb. Okay. So let's just play the clip and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Based on our marriage laws and the contract we've signed with each other,
Right.
to have sex with anybody else.
Right.
So these urges that come, I have to share them with the one person I decide to spend the rest of my life with.
Right.
So that brings me back to my soundbite.
Okay.
Right. I don't understand, and this is what we can discuss as a woman, because I don't want to say it's a man versus woman thing, but a lot of women do complain, oh, my husband's always on me. Why is he always on me? If sex is going to be a chore for you that you don't really want to do, why do women constantly push monogamy on men? If you know that you don't want to have to deal with him all the time just wanting you, why do you push monogamy on men?
Well, who's to say I pushed anything on anybody? Like,
Well, we know
two
that you pushed
people-
monogamy on me.
I pushed monogamy. I forced you to get married to me?
Time out. I didn't say you forced me to get married, but did you not say to me that you wanted to be engaged and you wanted to be married before you lived with me? You didn't say that?
I want $1 billion. That don't mean I'm going to get it. I
But-
can want
but I'm
something,
asking.
but not.
You right now you
Nobody,
dodging the question.
nobody pressed you to do it. Yes, is that something I wanted? Yes, it was. But
You didn't press me. Are you gonna lie now
So
to
you're
the
gonna
people
say-
because we talking about sex?
DeVal,
You're gonna
DeVal.
lie now to the people?
DeVal, knowing
Kadeen,
as
you didn't want
strong-
monogamy?
Of course I did.
So then why are you avoiding the question?
That's not avoiding the question. I'm saying, does that mean because I want it and I requested that you were going to deliver it? Like, nobody pressed you for that.
Time out. You just said you wanted it and requested it. Do you not hear yourself?
I can make a request. Is the request going to be granted?
Am I
That's
not?
up to
am
you,
I?
bro.
Am I not granting you monogamy?
You are granting it to
So
me.
this is my question.
Look
This is
at
my
you
question.
always. Look at your boy. Look at your boy.
This is my question. If you wanted monogamy,
Okay.
why would you want monogamy if sex is a chore for you? That's the question. You're avoiding the question.
I'm not avoiding the question, but at first you said women or in general me specifically are pushing monogamy on somebody. Okay, yes, that's something that I wanted, but I didn't press you for it and be like, DeVal, I'm gonna hold a gun to
Time
your
out.
head to propose to
So
me.
time out. Do
Also,
women?
also, let me finish. Also, I don't feel like I was adequately prepared for marriage. And I've said that before because if I knew that marriage and monogamy was going to involve me trying to meet you where you were at sexually for years to come, then I probably would have reevaluated it if I wanted to be monogamous anyway.
So that's fair, but we're not even talking about marriage. Let's even talk about dating, right?
Okay.
Two people are dating. Typically in society, who asks for exclusivity first, a woman or a man?
I would say a woman.
Thank you. That was my whole point. See, you were going all over the place. If women typically ask for exclusivity first, then when they get exclusivity, say, he always on me, he always want to have sex. Why are we asking men for exclusivity if we do not want to participate in sex at the same level as men? We have to think about what that does to a man.
I hear that.
And I don't think that conversation is being had.
Okay, I agree. And that part I agree with. Yes, that women are typically the ones that will ask for the exclusivity. I get that. Yes. But what I'm saying is, me as a woman, I don't think that I was necessarily prepared or in the mindset to know that. It's almost like once you get into it, then you're like, oh shoot, like this is what I'm going to have to keep up with.
I get that.
Us speaking as 36-year-old people know that now. Had I known that at 26,
I get that.
I would have to contend with that.
I get
Even
that.
in the dating realm,
I
then
get
it
that.
might have been something I would have reevaluated.
So now let's go back to what you asked me. You said to me you never pressured me to get married. In 2007, we were living together, right? You said you no longer wanted to live with me and shack up with me because you wanted to be my wife, not my girlfriend.
Right, because I wanted to know where
that
the
don't
relationship
sound like
was going.
pressure to you?
It sounds like me voicing where I see my life going. It sounds like me saying, this is what I would like. You can decide to meet me there. If not, we can reevaluate what exactly we're doing.
Okay. Additionally,
would I call it pressure per se? Not necessarily pressure.
It is pressure. But you don't want to say it's pressure. What about being engaged?
You might have felt pressure.
What about
there
being
was no
engaged?
Pressure behind it.
I said, we don't got to rush to get married. You said, I don't want to be engaged longer than a year. Is that not pressure?
That's me voicing my opinion about it.
Sounds like pressure to me. So you say you want to be engaged, I get engaged. You say you want to be married within a year. We do that. We get married, then you make it seem like sex is a chore to your husband. Once again, I ask the question, why do women who push forth monogamy on the man they're dating then get overwhelmed when that man who tries to provide that monogamy to you? Why do you get upset when we're trying to be what you want us to be? You don't want me to be with no one else, right? Right? I'm asking. This is a serious question.
Yes, absolutely.
You don't want me to be with no one else.
Absolutely.
So if I decide that all this testosterone I have, I want to give to you, why is this so overwhelming now? This is what you asked for.
Again, 26 and 27-year-old Kadeen was like, okay, here's the natural succession of life. You graduate, you're working, you meet somebody, you guys are dating. You want children.
Yes.
I want children.
Yes.
We don't want to wait too long or too late to have children.
Yes.
Though now a lot of people are waiting until their 30s to have children.
And I understand why.
And we at that time felt like, well, we're doing everything in this natural succession that the forces that be have given us this timeline. However, I did not realize that after having children, after, career changes, all of the turbulences that we've been through in life, that was going to have a direct effect on my sex drive.
Okay. Now, first of all, they are a married couple. They've been married over 10 years. It felt like a conversation we should not have been listening to.
It felt like we were eavesdropping into some people's private conversation. It did feel that way.
Yeah.
I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I was uncomfortable listening to it because I don't follow them, but I know very much, I know a lot about them from their, public post about their marriage. So this felt, if I didn't know them, I would be like, oh, y'all don't like each other or something ain't right, Well,
and I think they have shared a lot about their relationship through their podcast. I think they were on the first season of the Black Love Show on OhN, and they share a lot on their social media. So you do feel like a part of their relationship.
Right.
But she actually seemed like this was news to her, like new.
Yes. And it's like they didn't have that conversation off camera before they got on camera. And it was like, oh, whoa. Right. Y'all want to play?
Sometimes you might still have a contentious conversation, and you have the conversation, but then you say, okay, well, let's talk about it with our listeners. But y'all have already had y'all reconciliation.
Yeah. So it was uncomfortable. That was my first reaction.
Yeah, she seemed like she was actually hearing something for the first time. And now, so I will say, first off, his explanation of how he felt, I felt like it was honest, but also hurtful to hear. But I do believe he was being probably 10,000% honest.
Yes. Honesty really doesn't always come with a cherry on top, though. That's the problem. We want people to be honest with us, but when they do sometimes, it hurt my feelings, and I wasn't even her. So
it did hurt my feelings, too. Yeah, but I've often said I would rather have a hard truth than an easy lie. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it depends, though. In that situation, one, I think because it was public, and they could have totally chosen not to air that episode. I mean, it's kind of like with the Will and Jada thing. We had more hurt feelings than they probably had about it. So we're assuming we're putting our stuff on them. But from what they said, you would have to think that if it was as bad as we felt it was, they possibly wouldn't have shared it or.
Right.
But then again, you never know. But I feel like it was a hurtful thing to hear, and you want to give them points for being truthful, but it still hurts. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other part that hurts is she didn't really accept his truth for truth. They had two different perspectives on the whole how he said, well, you forced me into this relationship or forced me into this marriage, into monogamy and all this kind of stuff. And it was like, I didn't, she didn't see it that way. That's kind of what we were going to talk about today, like that whole
that is what we're going to talk about today. But you know what? I felt like they were both right. Because like she said, she didn't hold a gun to his head or whatever. But he said, but you said if we moved in, that we had to be engaged. And you said we weren't going to be engaged for this, And so that was her stating her intention. So that's the topic of this particular episode, because they had so many different pieces to break down in their podcast. We want to focus on this because we always talk about our intention. And the last few guys you've dated, when you stated your intention beyond wanting to just be their pen pal, you didn't move forward. And we were saying how it's refreshing that we used to not be able to do that. We used to just kind of let situationships drag on. And now that's definitely a deal breaker from date 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Hey, I'm in a space where I'm trying to invest in someone to see if it can be a thing. How is that different than pressuring someone? Because I don't think we've ever thought that we was pressuring anybody.
Well, in my case, I never felt like I was pressuring someone because this was like when we first met. So there's no pressure to live up to any kind of expectations at that point. Here's what I expect. Here's what I intend to do, moving forward. And if you don't feel that way, we don't even have feelings for each other at that point. So it doesn't matter.
Right. But I can see how if you are so adamant, or me, anybody who says, listen, I want to date with an intention and for a purpose, and I'm not looking to just be friends and if eventually something happens, I want to be intentional about our interactions. If a guy likes you enough, he might not feel that way, but he'll say, okay, well, let me go along for the ride. And I think what happens, even from day one, but let's say you both are actually dating and the woman wants to get married and the man doesn't necessarily want to get married, but he want to be with you. And you say, hey, I ain't gonna be dating nobody 5 years and not be married. Well, by the time you at the altar, it still was not his idea.
Yeah. That's the part, like you said, that I don't think we've taken into account when we started talking about intentions and being clear about what you want. Because I think both parties need to be clear about what they want. And it needs to come, from a space where it was like, we decided to do this. I hear so many men and women all the time. I mean, not just men. I mean, not just women. Men go through that. Women do the same thing where it's like, well, he wanted kids. I didn't want, you know what I mean? And so I feel like, oh no, it's a hard thing to say,
In a perfect world, and that's all we can dream about. But after I saw that episode and realizing they have 3 kids under the age of like 10, they've been married 10 years. They obviously love each other and they've been through a lot together. I think he tried to be an athlete and that didn't work out and she was still there and they've transitioned into different careers and all that. But it seems like either they did not have a conversation on the front end or just how would you know to have that conversation on the front end? Because you young, you in love, and we want to be together.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a conversation that you would even know to have. I think it's different being a little bit older.
Yeah. She alluded to that too when they were talking about the whole monogamy part of the relationship. And she was like, well, I didn't know what marriage looked like at the age of 20 something.
Right.
I didn't know
I hadn't had no babies and stuff.
Right.
I didn't know what I was going to be doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the more we have episodes like this and the more people put their business out in the street, the more it helps people in the long run, I think, Right. So, I mean, it
caused me to have a conversation with my boyfriend where I communicated to him a vision of an intention of our interaction. And I asked him for his. Well, the first day he said, well, let me pray about it tonight and I'll get back to you tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. And so the next day I'm sitting there waiting for the conversation and he said, oh, you know what? I fell asleep with it, So maybe about a week went by and I brought it up again. I said, now you do understand you're not communicating, your vision is communicating to me. I said, I do want you to know that because at this point I'm saying, well, I communicated something to him about a future together and he wasn't anti it, but he also has not communicated a vision of his own.
Right.
And I told him, I need you to communicate your vision, and it's not going to be my vision necessarily, and it shouldn't be. It's for your life. It's a different dream than the dream I have for my life. But we got to figure out if we're going to build and grow together, where do we meet in the middle in building a vision with each other? And I think what happens is a lot of people move forward on one person's vision.
Yeah.
And at some point, that thing gonna come back out, and you hear that. Well, why'd you marry me then? Yeah, I don't know why. It wasn't my idea.
That's a bad feeling to be in. I would never want to enter a relationship or a marriage for that matter, where I was the one pushing it.
But again, it's a fine line between pushing it and stating your intention and having your.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But if that was my only intent, like, I don't know. I would love to hear from married men and single men about how they feel about women stating their intentions. Because you hear the flip side of that where, I knew she wasn't gonna get married. I mean, she wasn't gonna stay with me if she didn't get married. And they don't really say it as in a negative way. It's just like, I knew I wanted to.
I dated a guy who got married to the girl after me, and I said, well, why was she different? He said, well, like on our second date, she told me, listen, I'm not trying to play no games. I'm here to get married. If you're not trying to marry me, don't ask me out no more.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting here like, that's all I had to say. Not saying I wanted to marry him, but
yeah.
I think I had been so conditioned by the time I had met him. This is, almost 20 years ago, to just be cool, just be easy. I wasn't stating intentions. I was just happy to be here. It was just an honor to be here.
In my 20s and, in college age and stuff like that, I had no desire to go to college to meet a husband. Like that was, some people do that, I had no desire. We talk about, well, never mind. But anyway, no, that was not my desire. And even after I graduated, I wanted to do things. And I knew a family and a husband would slow me down. So that wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't have been in the space to state an intention at that point because it would have been negative anyway.
But if you were with someone that you wanted to do it with, I think that's also the difference because I've never thought about being with somebody and getting married and all that. However, if there was someone there that wanted to do it,
this is true.
Then I would have.
If the opportunity presented itself, yes.
Right.
I think
I was never anti the idea.
Yeah, I wasn't. No, yeah, and I want to clear that up. I was not anti go to college and find your husband or whatever. Let him come to you, whatever. It just wasn't necessarily something when I started dating someone that I would be like, oh, I want to marry. I wasn't thinking about marriage.
Let me ask you this: I know you are intentional now about when you date someone.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that you weren't always intentional? Not saying you wanted to marry everybody you dated, but were you ever just dating for sport? Because I think, before you answer, I think sometimes when we're younger, it's not even a thought. It's like, well, if it works out, we'll keep dating. If it doesn't,
right,
keep it moving.
Yeah. No, I don't think I ever dated for sport. I dated to be with someone, but it was one of those things where, okay, if this works out, then great. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't, I don't think I ever.
I think the fact is we should be emboldened and feel comfortable enough and confident enough in who we are and what we bring to the table to say, this is what I want. And this is where I'm in my life. And this is where I would like to see my life going. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to go there with you. But if a guy hears that and hears it as pressure, is there any way to present that information that's true for you? It don't have nothing to do with him. It's like, hey, we just met. It might not be you, but this is what I want.
Yeah.
How can a man hear your intentions and not process it as pressure? Because at that point, my question is, if he sees it as pressure, even the couple 10 years in, it almost gives the impression that means you did not want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that it wasn't your idea, is that you didn't want to do it.
And that's why it hurt my feelings watching that clip. Because I felt like, he's always presenting himself who as someone who adores his wife, this beautiful mother, his children. He always puts her on the pedestal. And I know that's just, what it is. But I felt like it was genuine for the most part. So when he said that, I was like, whoa.
But does that mean that? Because
I don't know. It feels like that.
It felt that way. But just because something feels some way doesn't mean it's true, right?
No, it's true. Your feelings.
You bring in your baggage, right? On how you process.
You in trouble all the time.
All the time. So I was looking at it and I was thinking, okay, let's say you asked me to go out. And I didn't necessarily want to go out. And you say, come on, girl, you never go out. And I go and I have a great time. Well, if I say, well, girl, I'm glad you pressured me into going. Does that mean I didn't want to go? No, I didn't want to go, but I wasn't opposed to going because I went.
Yes.
If you pressured me into a monogamous relationship, it's like,
like I said, that's a hard thing to navigate in my mind. I can't really come across like the best solution for that?
Yeah, what is the solution? So you guys make sure you comment, because we realized in watching that clip and having a short discussion about it before this podcast, we walked away with, normally either I have an opinion, she has an opinion, it's the same opinion, it's the opposite opinion, but this one we're both like, okay, well, you have to state your intentions or else you'll just be in this gray area. And gray is much worse than intention.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, but you state your intention and somebody wants to get to know you or wants to be with you, but it just was never their intention.
Yeah. I don't know. I just,
And it's a lot of men who think something was their idea because they proposed, but if they look back and based on a lot of times their behaviors and situations, it was never their idea. And that's for me. When I was younger, I used to be real okay with approaching men, kind of shoot my shot. I was very confident in that and didn't see a problem with it. The reason why I don't do it or stopped doing it as I got older is he will say yes, he will go along with it, but he will never be overly attached to it because it was never his idea. So yes, he will see me as long as I see him.
Right.
But he ain't never trying to see me. And I started noticing the interactions of when I was making the effort. Yeah, he'd be available. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, okay, cool. But he was never being the proactive one in the interactions of each other. So that's when I said, okay, it's going to have to be his idea. I would say in my current relationship, that's probably what gives me some sense of real security in that it was his idea for 17 years. And it was never my idea. Now, he did not pressure me into a relationship. It was not my intention to be in a relationship with him. It was his intention to be in a relationship with me. And once he presented himself free and clear, and I didn't learn of his intention until I became intentional about it. And then he communicated, oh, I knew we were going to get back together. And it was like, oh, you did? Where you get that from? Right. So no, I definitely wasn't pressured into it. But each person has to keep updating their intentions, I think, throughout.
Right.
Because you might say on the first day, I want to get married and have kids. Well, life happens and changes, and you might change your intentions. And you might say, you didn't want to do that no more. I'm thinking of, what's her name? Jenny Mai. Her and her husband didn't want kids. And that was the basis kind of them saying, oh, we can do this together. And then he wanted kids. And then she didn't still. So.
How much you want to bet you have a baby?
With Jeezy. Oh, she's in love with Jeezy. That's a whole nother thing.
Girl, didn't we talk about that? We might have talked about this on.
No, we never talked about Jenny Mai and Jeezy.
Oh, we didn't.
And Manwood.
I thought we didn't talk about it on Patreon. I thought we did.
I know we ain't never talked about them. But we can.
No, not today.
Not today. But it's one of those things where you can always say, what you wouldn't do. I think about what I have said I wouldn't do, but that I would want to do with this particular one. So, but again, you have to update your intentions. I think of early conversations with my boyfriend and, oh, I like this and I like this and I wouldn't do that. Because I wasn't thinking about us getting back together. It was just a conversation. And now we're together. I'm like, well, have you thought about this? And have you thought about this? And have you thought about that? And he's like, I thought you said you didn't want. I'm like, I'm so crazy. I just be playing.
That's interesting. Yeah. And you have to update your intentions.
You do. And you have to say, hey, look, I know I said such and such when we met, but I'm actually feeling something different.
So is it too much to ask when you think somebody's going to propose to you or after the fact, right after the proposal, you sit down and say, hey, this is our idea, right? Like, I didn't force you.
You got to. You got to.
Because
I think it's got to be before the proposal.
That's all I'm about to say, and probably would be better before. Like I would never force you to do this, so I want to make sure. Because I the last thing I want somebody to tell me after I've been married for them 10 years
is that they was pressured into it. This is, like I said, for me being old, me and my boyfriend being older. We're on the older end, so our timeline is shorter. And I don't even want to say timeline because it doesn't have to happen in a certain amount of time. But it ain't gonna happen in a certain amount of time either, And so I know I have communicated when we talk about a future together. We haven't talked about rings or dates or none of that kind of stuff, but we've talked about an intention of, I can see a future with you, and we speak in those terms, right? Well, at some point, somebody gonna have to pull some triggers somewhere. Now, I know we have a future episode coming up about pulling triggers or not pulling triggers. And it's basically the opposite conversation from this. When you have a long-standing relationship with somebody, but you don't state your intentions, there's no reason to pull any triggers because you just together, you good to one or less of the parties.
Right.
So I think it still comes down to, as most issues we talk about in relationships, is communication.
Right.
Because if you say, you know what, I know I said I didn't want to be in an exclusive relationship when we first started dating, but I've changed my mind and now I do. Mm-hmm. Or vice versa. Or, but you got to say, hey, what is it that you're thinking and feeling? Mm-hmm. And you pray that you are with someone who is not going to say, oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah, what you said. Oh yeah, me too. And it's like, no. Tell me what. Yeah,
that's another scary part about that, because people will say what they say anyway. I mean, as grown as we are, there are people out there that say what you want them to say.
Just me too. You remember before I went to San Antonio to see my now boyfriend, I had this grand idea when we were still gray. I said, you write something on a piece of paper of what you want, and I write something on a piece of paper of what I want, and we'll exchange the paper. So that way what the person said would not be contingent upon what the other person said. Mm-hmm.
And it's a good idea. It was a good idea, although y'all didn't get to that point. But it makes sense because you want your intentions to be your intentions. Right. Sometimes even unintentionally, you can hear somebody else's and I'm like, oh yeah, I could do that. No, what you want is what you want. What you want is what you want. Let's put it together and see how we can mold this to be one idea.
Yeah, I'm curious. That episode made me think about how many relationships end on reality shows, because so many people had so many comments from watching that clip.
Yeah.
And I wonder, it's not, I feel like people who go on reality shows or podcasts or whatever with their relationships, there's a certain level of security they feel they have, but there's no way you can't read or hear or see. And you'll defend it initially, like, y'all don't know, and y'all don't know, and that was just 20 minutes, or that was just 6 minutes, y'all don't know. But it doesn't mean you're not receiving it as,
Right.
I wonder, because you ain't looking at it like that. So when somebody offers you a totally different perspective about your stuff, it's like, well, no, it's not like that. And then you have the quiet time. You're like, well, is it like that? Mm-hmm. And we 3 kids in. So it don't matter what you felt back then. Go on in there and run that bath water tonight. We should have talked about it 10 years ago. Oh, well. Oh, well, you should have said something then. We together now? And that's another topic is about the forced monogamy. And
they brought, that was another hot topic. I think that was probably hotter than as far as the comments were concerned.
Right. And just to touch on that a little bit, because we could probably do a totally different episode. We wanted this one to be about intention versus pressure, and say we don't know where the line is when you cross from pressuring somebody into doing your idea versus stating your opinions and your intention for yourself and standing your ground, But as far as that monogamy thing, and his point was saying, you force this monogamy on me, but then when I want you, you turn me down. And she's saying things change, things happen, da-da-da-da-da. Some of the comments I was reading, yes, definitely went in on that. But one stood out to me where somebody says this speaks to his immaturity, because intimacy isn't always sex. And sometimes women don't respond the way a man would probably think she would in wanting him because of lack of intimacy. And whether that's running the bath water for the kids, whether it's washing the dishes, whether it's doing just something sweet, rubbing my feet while we watch just something, that's what's going to turn me on more so than you just thinking out.
I agree.
And I think that's where men kind of miss that thing of, it's a whole lot of foreplay for women. Women take a whole lot of foreplay, and that don't just mean kissing 10 minutes. It's the whole day.
What about the men who feel like they do those things? Okay, there are 2 types. They'll do those things and still not getting anything in return. Or the whole, they don't want it. They shouldn't have to be like, if you should want to be with your husband, period. Like, they don't understand that. So
that, but what are the odds that you're married, you're in a long-term relationship, y'all always gonna be turned on at the same time?
You're not. So, but I talked to a friend of mine who was talking about that, and he was like, as men, we don't have an option to say no, though, Because when we say no, it looks like either we're out here doing something with somebody else. We're tired sometimes too, but we always go along with it. So women have more give in that when they can just say, you know what, I got a headache tonight. I just, but it is
But
a
if
double
a guy
standard.
turns you down, if you're trying to get with your man and he say, "Baby, I'm tired," you're like, "Who you been with? What you tired of?" This is true. I guess. Because I've never been in a marriage or beyond a marriage. I've never been in that type of relationship
Right.
where every day is every day. And I'm not even just talking about sex or intimacy. I'm saying just the mood swings of a day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with you and I, we both have our own homes. If you in a bad mood, I don't know if y'all ever seen her in a bad mood, but I know that when you're in a bad mood, and you will say, and I don't know, and I was in a bad mood, but you have the advantage of not having to spread that around.
Right.
And me too. It's like, I know when this ain't no day for me to be having no company,
right,
talking, but you don't have that advantage when y'all together.
Yeah, that's true.
So we can't speak to it because it might be you had a bad day, or you didn't get that email, or you didn't get that response you wanted, or you didn't get the proposal, for that business pitch or whatever. By the time he come around, I don't care nothing about what you're talking about right now,
Mm-hmm.
quite honestly. And that's just a relationship.
Yeah, it is.
And not feeling like you owe somebody something,
Mm-hmm.
but you do owe each other a certain level of reciprocity. Reciprocity?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. And I don't know what that line is. From what you do because you have to do it, what you do because you want to do, or what you do because you should do it. Those are all gray areas.
And I think men want to feel wanted just like women want to feel wanted. And they don't want to have to, a husband that shouldn't have to feel like his wife is just doing something out of obligation.
Right. I don't think most of them care as long as she did it. Oh, you talk about that.
At the same time, that gets kind of old too. You want to feel desired in your relationship.
Talk about that wanted thing. That feel wanted. That's the same thing as intention versus pressure. Because whereas a man might feel wanted because a woman actively engages in a process with him,
mm-hmm.
a woman feels wanted through the whole day. It's not just because you want me right now. It's what you did at 2:00 this afternoon. It's that
mm-hmm.
phone call you made at 3:30.
Mm-hmm.
It's that text you sent at 4:15.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's that makes me feel like you want me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not you just walking in and saying, "Come here." It's like,
yeah, because we're different people. We're just totally different people, and we have different needs.
Right, and we feel wanted in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was a lot that came out of that episode. We can probably have about 25 different podcasts off of that one clip.
Yeah.
But we pray that they work out whatever they need to work out. But the good part, and why we do our podcast, the same thing, is that it sparks conversations that we need to have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had this conversation with my boyfriend of saying,
mm-hmm.
I need to know your vision. And he did communicate his vision to me. It wasn't the day that I had written it on the calendar. He showed up and communicated, and I feel comfortable in saying, okay, that's not far from mine. And really it's the same, but it's, even if someone says they have the same vision, it's still vastly different because y'all
mm-hmm.
are coming from two different places. So mm-hmm. as much as you say, oh yeah, we had the same vision, it couldn't possibly be the same.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Somebody is giving up a space, or somebody, there's so much ebb and flow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it ain't the same, but
yeah, that's true.
I told him, listen, we can save a whole lot more money with you paying my mortgage.
You just
threw that what y'all gonna do when I come in here and tell y'all I done gave up the fight? I'm off the street. And I will not pressure anyone. I will say, I know I have never, let me say this. I know I have never pressured anyone. However, I know that I was with someone who felt pressured.
Mm.
That was because he was newly divorced, and then he met this great, wonderful woman who wanted to be with him. And he just felt an inherent pressure of, okay, wait, I don't want to be responsible for somebody else's life. I just stopped doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm still responsible for my kids' lives. So I know that was the downfall of our relationship. And I can probably say I probably did pressure him, but I know he felt more pressure than I gave.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the only time. So, ladies, if you are in a situation, state your intention, be clear, but it's a fine line between.
Just know there may be some consequences to that, or
I think the only way around it is to have them communicate their vision. And they might say, you know what, I see me being with you, but I don't see us ever get married.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then that might be a whole new conversation. And it might be an adaptation of your vision, or it might be a breakup. But you would rather him tell you that than to be walking down the aisle, stood up the night before the wedding. You know how many times that happened, because he ain't never want to do it.
Right. Exactly.
We have seen that happen too many times.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, child, I think the podcast started from somebody breaking up with me via text message while I was at work. But could you imagine what would have to get started if I got stood up at the altar?
We had to go on tour.
I'm talking about after all the smoke went away from the fires that were lit.
We had to go on tour with that one.
Woo, child. And people had that happen and they lived to tell it. So bless y'all all. Woo. I'll send out the invitations and then
I don't think anybody's above it either.
Listen.
Get the look at the
How
drum.
many stories the woman go ahead and have a party, you know, with the reception? You know, I mean, you think of how many times you've heard these stories. I'm like, but I believe it comes down to it was never his idea. Mm-hmm. And he's thinking, I'm doing the noble thing by leaving her at the altar instead of marrying her when I know I don't want to.
But he could have done a noble thing 6 months ago when we started planning his wedding. Or however long ago it was.
You saw how you got mad about that? And you had a timeline? Like, oh, but he could have told me 6 months ago.
I know, because they always think it's the noble idea. Well, think harder next time.
It's, child, we've been all over the place. All right, give us what you think, because I don't think there is a right answer. The only positive thing I can say is communication.
Women, if you've had this experience, you know, if you're married and you had to be intentional about it, let us know how that happened. And men, especially, man, let us know like how you feel about a woman stating her intentions and all that kind of. We're not saying we want to be with you. I make that clear every time I state my intentions.
Right.
Like, I don't know that this is going to work, but this is where I intend my life to go, you know.
And we have both heard women say, listen, I told him this, and he knew that if he was going to be with me, it was going to have to be on these terms. So we've never heard his version of events. Right. And then we've heard men say, well, she told me, and I knew that she was going to, you know, we even had CJ, who was a guest, remember? And he was saying his wife was like, look,
this is it.
He didn't communicate it as he was pressured. He knew she was the one too. And so sometimes it might be that encouragement you need. Or I don't know.
Who knows? Okay. We'll let y'all discuss it.
Talk amongst yourselves and let us know what y'all think. Because this is going all day. It's like, but then again, but I don't know. But then it could be. All right. Well, we'll see where we land. But we're going to talk next week about the opposite of stating intention. Having no real requirements. Is that serving your purpose?
Right.
We got another clip for that too. So make sure y'all tune in next week for another episode of Oh, no, he didn't.
Girl, yes, he did.